Hey there, if we haven't met before, my name is Julie and I am participating in the Welcome Winter collaboration hosted by Brenda over at Rustic Lace DIY and Gwen at Home with Gigi. Now, the links to the host channels and the playlist for the whole collaboration will be in my description below, but let's get into DIY number one. Now, I found this little snowman at the thrift store, and it was when they were starting to really mark everything down. And I thought, you know what? I can do something with him. He's not really my style. I'm not really into the real pale blue colors. So I thought, let's take off his scarf. I really liked the nose and the eyes, but this little dot of a mouth wasn't doing it for me. Neither were these little snowflakes. So I'm just going to work on getting these taken off. I got my little scraper tool, and these popped off super easy, thankfully. Didn't damage the wood in any way. And I was kind of worried about the paperness of the birch wood, but it came off, or it didn't tear anything. Now, this is the micro sander kit. If you have never used one of these before for crafting, they are amazing. I will have a link down in the description below, which is an affiliate link to Amazon. And they have all these different little grits of sandpaper, and they're held on like little piece of Velcro. And they're so easy to change, and it's really easy to use. And I'm just going to be sanding off any of the glue that remained from those little snowflakes that were attached onto there. I'm going to get it on both of the pieces of his belly, and then I'm going to scratch up his face just a little bit because I am going to paint it. I want to make sure there's nothing bad on there, and then just really gently the paperness of the birch. Now, this beautiful paper I found at Hobby Lobby, and I couldn't resist it. Didn't know what I was going to do with it at the time. But as soon as I got this snowman, I thought, how cute would it be to put this beautiful, like evergreen paper on his stomach? And it was just kind of like one of those things where it's very winter decor. It doesn't really look like Christmas. So I'm turning him over, and I am going to trace very generously around the snowman. Now, I'm giving it quite a bit of room because I want there to be overlap when I cut it out. So I'm just checking to make sure that I can see my pencil on this paper. And then once I get it all traced, I'm going to get it cut out. And I'm just going to cut a little chunk out of it, and then I can save the rest of this paper for a craft later down the road. Now, when I am cutting this, I am cutting even wider than the lines that I made, even though those were probably big enough. I just wanted to be sure that I had enough room. And because the way the snowman is shaped, I had to cut these out in two separate pieces. And now I'm just positioning them on here to make sure that the trees are looking the way that I want them to show up on his stomach. I'm going to take my Mod Podge, and I have seen other crafters use really pretty like squeeze bottles for their Mod Podge. And I think I'm going to invest in one of those because my Mod Podge is getting low and I have to dip my brush all the way down in there. And then I get it all over my fingers and my paintbrush. But I'm just going to give a generous amount onto each one of his sections here so that I can get a good adhesion when I put my paper on. Now, I was thinking about doing the method where you let the Mod Podge dry, put the paper over it, then put a piece of like wax paper or parchment paper and then iron over the top. But I thought, I have time. I'm just going to do it the old-fashioned way. I'm going to set it on top of the wet Mod Podge. I'm going to rub my fingers around the edges so that I can be sure I get good adhesion everywhere. And I'm going to do that to both of the pieces here. And then as soon as I get it all tucked on there the way that I want it to look, I'm just going to take some more of that Mod Podge and smear a generous layer back over the top of all that so that it is going to be on there nice and good. And do that again just to both pieces. And this paper, I can't tell you, I almost would love to have a big print of just like a forest of these beautiful trees. So now you can see his sections are very wet. Now this paint, I had never tried the whole baking soda in the paint texture kind of thing before. So I thought that I would, and I tried it on an ornament, didn't turn out the way I wanted it. So I scrapped that idea, but I'm just going to use some of that paint here and paint his face. And you know what? It really would have been so much easier had I just taken his eyes and nose off as well and then glued them on later. But you know me, I have to do things the hard way, so I had to paint around everything. But slow and steady, I got it on there without damaging his face or his nose. And now I'm going to take this little sander, and the key is to kind of go in a downward motion on the paper. And I'm just doing this as gently as possible too, because again, that papery bark of the birch wood, and these are real birch wood slices, by the way, it tears super easy. If you've ever used it before, you know. And I didn't want to damage any of that on the side of the snowman. So I'm just going to work on getting it little section by section taken off of here until I get all of the pieces removed. And it was a little tricky down in the creases between the upper and lower portion of his body to get those little pieces out. But eventually, it took me a while, but I did it. So here's what he looks like now that he's got his sections all sanded off. And I'm going to take just a little bit of this black craft paint and paint his hat. Now, I kind of had an idea in my head of what I wanted to do with the hat, which, you know, are you the same way? You get this idea, and then when you start doing it, you change gears. Because you can see I didn't paint the rest of his hat. And then I just started taking some of this antique wax, and I wanted to tone down kind of that bright whiteness of the birchwood. And I mean, I know birchwood is kind of white colored, but I just really wanted him to be a little more rustic because of the trees on the front, give him a little more depth. So I did that. And then I thought, you know what? Now I'm just going to paint his whole hat black. So I grabbed my black paint again, and I'm just going to get the rest of his hat painted black. And then I'm just going to adorn his hat a different way. So now we've got all the black paint on. And I decided this little scarf, again, as I mentioned in the beginning, blue. I do like blues, but for what I was going after this look, I didn't really care for the light blue scarf. So I took this old flannel shirt that I use for crafting, and I cut out a piece pretty much to length. I did it a little bit longer, and it was a little wider than I wanted it to be. So I will trim it down a little bit, but I'm just going to wrap this around his neck and tie it. And I think I did end up giving it 2 knots. I can't remember. I fiddled with it for a little bit because I kind of wanted it to hang off to the side. And then on his mouth, the mouth of snowman, it always gets me because there's so many different things you can do to give him different personalities. And I kind of decided I wanted him to kind of like have a half smile or a little smiley smirk. I don't know. So you can see I just put little dots up the side of his face. And then in my stash, I found some really pretty, almost wooden, I think they actually were wooden buttons. And I decided those were going to be what was going to adorn his little belly. So I'm going to get each one of those glued on, just using hot glue. He's not anything that's going to be manhandled much, so that'll hold it on there just fine. And then I decided I cut another little strip of that same fabric, and I decided that I was going to wrap that around the top of his hat. So I just put a little dab of glue on the back to get it started, and then I wrapped it all the way around to the front. And I should have had my little silicone fingers out because the glue comes through the fabric pretty easy, and it was kind of frying the tips of my fingers there. But now I'm just going to get the excess cut off, and then these are just little tiny pieces that I had left over from some other crafts that I did, some little artificial greenery. And I'm going to first glue on a couple of little pieces, and then one kind of laying on the top of his hat. And then these little pine cones were deconstructed from some little pieces that I had bought from the Hobby Lobby. So I'm just going to put 2 little pine cones on there. And then I also cut off 3 little berries and glued those on as well. And then I added 1 more little piece of greenery sticking upwards after he was done. Now this is some eyeshadow that I found in my drawer that I haven't used in years, but it's pink. And I'll give you a closer up shot here because it's kind of hard to see, but he has little cute blushed cheeks now. I just think he's so cute. And here is what he looks like when he's all done. I just love that paper on him. I kind of was wondering if I should have done something on his face, but let me know what you think. Do you feel like his face white? Do you think I should have put some paper on there? So now we're going to go on to craft number 2. Now this one, I bought this large styrofoam ball at the Dollar Tree. This is just some green paint that I have in my stash. And then these, oh my goodness, run to the Dollar Tree and get you some of these if you love to work with artificial greens. They're beautiful, and there are so many pieces on these picks, and they're $1.75 now, but for what you can get elsewhere, I just thought it was a pretty good deal. Now I cut these all off and I started gluing them on. I kind of was thinking to myself when I was starting, I'm like, I'm wondering if these pieces are too long and I'm not going to like the way it looks. And sure enough, by the time I got about 6 of them glued on there, because the styrofoam ball is so big, it was really making this piece way bigger than I wanted it to be. So I took and I cut them all down a lot smaller, and I'm just going to reuse those holes and glue them down on in there. And as I get going, if I can see any of those marks, I'll just touch them up with some paint. But spoiler alert, I didn't. By the time you get all the greenery in there, it didn't affect it. Now, these are really flimsy, as I was just showing you. They're not like hard pieces of wire. It's just the softer plastic. And so in order to get the rest of them in here, now that I've filled up all the holes of the ones that I tore out, I'm just using a barbecue skewer, pre-poking a hole in there, and then putting glue on my little piece and then poking it down inside that hole. And it worked really well. So here we are making some progress. And I only started out with 3 of those bundles from the dollar store, and I didn't know how far it was going to get me. So I'm just going to keep going until I use up all the pieces. And we're getting pretty close here, and you can see with the size of this ball, it's making progress, but it's definitely not filling the whole thing. And I couldn't decide if I was going to do the whole ball completely wrapped or if I just wanted to do like 3/4 of it. And by the time I got to this point, I knew I was going to have to go to the dollar store and grab a few more of those picks. So that is actually what I ended up doing. And I'm going to show you, this is a smaller one that I got from the dollar store. And I probably will do, if I do another one of these balls, I will do them smaller because believe it or not, by the time you get the greenery on here, it does make this very large. I probably should have measured it to let you know. But here is what we're looking like. And I'm just going to tuck a few more pieces in and around here. I decided I'm going to use this kind of as a stationary piece, not a hanging ball at this time. So I'm just going to continue poking some holes with my skewer in here, tucking in my green pieces, and this is what we look like. I just set it in this cute little winter themed kind of like candle holder that I had, and I ran to the dollar store and I got just a little flickering candle because of course you don't want a real flame underneath there, but I thought it turned out really adorable. I'm actually going to take this ball and revamp it a little bit more when spring comes, so this is really a versatile piece. And I'm just showing you can actually put it in another container too and transform it from winter decor just to everyday seasonal decor. It's kind of like a little boxwood. Now we're going to move on to DIY number 3, and this will be our last one for this video. I had this very fun shaped styrofoam piece that I got at the thrift store. It actually came with 3. Didn't really know what I was going to do with it because it's not like a normal cone, and I didn't know how anything would turn out. So I just decided I was going to use some more of this fluffy chenille yarn that I have and start wrapping it around. And I started at the very top instead of going from the bottom up because I wanted it to kind of flow from the top down. So I'm just going to start putting glue and winding this around. Kind of boring, but it's kind of one of those mindless crafts where you can just sit there and do it. And at the time that I was doing this, Christmas music is still playing around here, so on one of our channels. And so I was just still enjoying some Christmas music and getting this made. And here we are almost at the bottom of the second section. And I was trying to make sure as I was doing this, the whole point is I wanted to still be able to see those individual layers of the tree like you can when the styrofoam base was empty. And so I was trying to, as I got to this point, tuck it underneath the layers as well to try to give that definition. And it was working. So we're just going to continue getting the rest of this on here to the base and then have a look at it. And I'll show you what I mean. And I will be honest, I think I burnt my fingers more times than I could count on this one. I would get too much glue on there and then push on it and it would come right through. But so now you see here how there is definitely definition here on the bottom section, but up here, there just wasn't as much as I really wanted. So what I decided to do is just wrap a whole nother layer around the top so that I could get a little more depth between the first and the second one. And here I am coming to the end of doing that. Didn't want to bore you with that whole section all again. And now that I've got that second layer just on that top piece, you will see by doing that, it really did give that definition that you could see in the beginning when it was bare. And now I have all 3 pieces. And this is just kind of a very simple wintry craft that you could do. I have him sitting on a cute little holly stand, but you could put him on anything. You could do 3 of these and have them 3-tiered in different heights. Very simple, very sweet. And it was the only thing, honestly, I could think to do with this one. But now we're going to do our wrap up of all the crafts that we did today. So here is our yarn tree. And next to it, we have the boxwood ball that we did. And let me know down in the comments what one is your favorite. I'd sure love to have you subscribe to and give a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Here's our sweet little snowman. And this channel, I also do a lot of gardening things, so we would love to have you subscribe if you enjoy that type of content as well. So don't forget to check out the description box below for the playlist for all of the creators. Have an awesome day. I'll see you next time.